I have been a gang member, a drug taker, an abused kid, a university student, an actress. I have had many lives. I think that's what helps me write the characters that I do.
This is Writer's Mosaic in Conversation. Jonny Wright talks to Isis Davis about her journey from street gang member to actress to screenwriter.
Hello, it's Jonny Wright here with Writer's Mosaic, and I'm here with the amazing writer-performer Isis Davis. Writer-performer, is that how you like to be described, Isis?
Yeah, thank you, Jonny. Yeah, writer, performer, writer, actor. As I was saying, I write a bit, I act a bit. Yeah, I'm happy to be described as that. Hello. Okay.
Well, you write a bit and act a bit very well. I mean, I don't know your acting so well, but from your writing, I love it. It really comes off the page.
Before COVID, I was 80% acting, 20% writing. I'd have the odd commission. But I was, booked and working as an actor constantly on different shows or on stage, and I wrote when I could, sort of thing, or I'd take a job which could fit in with the acting work I had. Since COVID, very soon into lockdown, my whole career switched, and now I'd say it's probably about 90% writing, 10% acting, 85-15. And I'm finding it more and more difficult to act because I have so many projects on my slate, writing projects, which obviously I feel really blessed and happy about. And since then, I never worked so much. The acting world had stopped, but people wanted stuff written, and I was very fortunate. But also I'm married and have kids, and I needed to bring in that money, so I took on a lot of work. And since then, I haven't really stopped.
What do you think it was about COVID? Was it you actively looking for work? Was it as a result of lockdown, where people had more stuff in development? Was it a result of response to George Floyd and lack of diversity? Or do you think it was just happenstance? Why did the writing begin to take over?
Well, I think probably a lot to do with all of those reasons. For me personally, because I was being booked a lot as an actor, I couldn't take on a lot of writing work. I prioritised my acting career, I think, at first, but then I was also, just before lockdown, selected by the BBC TV drama programme, I think just before 2020. So that opened a lot of doors for me, and I was commissioned to write a script by the BBC. And I was paired with an indie company, which was Balloon, which was an amazing experience. And I think after that, my name, a lot of production companies realised who was on that list for the BBC. So I started getting a lot more calls, and people wanted to have generals and talk about what I was doing, and my work was circulating. And I think that kind of got the ball rolling for me. But also, maybe what happened with George Floyd, and people wanted different voices, and people of colour and female voices, and I think my voice is quite distinct, and I guess people just liked what I was putting out there. And when lockdown hit and loads of my acting contracts stopped, work was coming in through my literary agent, and usually I would probably say, I can't do that, the dates don't fit, because maybe I had a theatre production or I was filming something. But because that side of things had completely stopped, I was like, okay, let's have a look at the material. Yeah, okay, I'll take that on board. Yeah. And then it just I was just taking on so much work. Also, my wife, her business was she was on furlough, so I was just wanted to get money in, and it just happened where I was just being offered commissions. And I've never gone back the other way, because I love writing, and I'm involved in such exciting projects that I haven't really found the time to balance it back out with the acting and writing. So for now, it's mostly writing. But I am still, I was on a set a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in something that's coming out soon. So, I'm still doing both. But yeah, it's mainly writing, which I'm happy with.
And you mentioned the indie company Balloon, who the BBC paired you with to write a script, and this script was Rose. Is that correct?
Yes, Rose. Yes, it's quite a strong, touching script that I wrote with the help of Danny and Dave at Balloon. Yeah, and the BBC commissioned it.
Well, I want you to describe it in your own words, because there's a big twist at the end, which I don't want to give away. So I'm going to let you describe to the listeners what Rose is all about.
Rose is about a troubled character who experiences a rape early on, and it's how that character deals with what happened to them. And it's about a very troubled character who is haunted by something that happened to them in the past, and it's how they deal with it and how it's governed their life. And in later series you go on to see, when this person has a chance at revenge, are they worse for trying to seek revenge on someone that did something to them so long ago? And when is it okay to let something go?
I guess it's how someone who is involved in a sexual assault deals with the consequences.
You summed it up better than me. Yeah.
You write twisty, turny scripts. Would you say this is a part of your identity as a writer? These twisty, turny, cliffhangery kind of things in your scripts I really enjoyed, and is this part of your identity as a writer?
I think so. It kind of happened by accident when I first started writing. I guess it was because of my acting, and I wasn't seeing any roles for people like me. So I thought, well, if I'm not seeing them, I'm going to start writing them, because I want to be seen as an actor. So I think that is why I started writing for TV. But I think somehow in a lot of my early scripts, there's always twists and turns, and sometimes I don't even plan them. It's just as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, that could, or I'd look back on it and I link two things that suddenly 3 scenes later you're like, oh my god, it makes sense. Sometimes it just writes itself. I don't really know how to explain it. When I first started writing professionally, I felt such a freedom. That's why a lot of my earlier scripts are so out there and raw, because I wasn't coming from a literary background. I was just a real person with real life experiences, and just pouring it out, and somehow managed to get plot and twists and turns in there. But I think now some of my newer stuff, especially when it's on other people's shows, are a bit more structured, and it's fitting into someone else's voice when I'm just an episodic writer, and I've learnt that along the way. But yeah, my own stuff is usually thrillers, family dramas, with real characters, with deep emotion and many layers. But one of my scripts is about a family. I won't give away the title because it's on the BBC Commissioner's slate, waiting for the green light, which I was talking to you about earlier. But I mean, that show, there are characters within it that we shouldn't like, and you don't like, but you see things within them that make them human, and you can almost understand why they are the way they are, even though you don't like them. You can see the humanness in them, and I think that's what I try to do. And the hooks and the thrills and the taking you on a journey, and then being like, oh no, it's not what you thought. I think it came naturally when I started writing stories.
And then you say people like you, and you're like a real person from the real world experiences. So who are you?
I am a mixed race Londoner, born in the 80s, who is from a working class background, who grew up in the heart of Carnival, who is a lesbian now with a wife and children and is settled and has moved out and now lives in the suburbs. But I have been a gang member, a drug taker, an abused kid, a university student, an actress. I have had many lives. I think that's what helps me write the characters that I do. I've had many stages along the way, good and bad. But today, I am a married woman with kids, going through bringing up children, living in the suburbs, and just trying to make ends meet and live the quiet life and write in my private study.
If you could combine bits of all these lives, which would be the best, or would it just be this life that you're living now?
Every stage of my life there have been best bits. I think growing up in Labatt Grove, and within Carnival and that community, and my early childhood, I used to play for Mangrove, Steel Pan, and I used to that is where I'm from, that is my community, and I have such amazing childhood memories from that. Then, things took a turn and I didn't have a great childhood, and I was involved in loads of different things, and there were lots of sad times. But then when I became a teenager and I came out later on and I was on the gay scene, those were some of the happiest times of my life as a young adolescent, just being like, oh, I'm free, I don't care. And I moved away from sort of the street life and was raving and doing all the gay raves, and those were some really happy times. When I went into rehab at 21, there was a moment that I thought that I would never leave Labatt Grove, and the life I was living, that was it. I was blinkered into thinking I wouldn't be anything but bad, that was it. So there was a time when I left London, and for the first time in years I was on no substances, and I sort of was in the countryside, and I had this new lease of life, and that was an amazing time in my life. I felt real freedom then, because I was free from addiction, I was free from the constraints of living in that gang, criminal world, and not having to play up to a certain stereotype that I'd created for myself in my area, and just living in the country, re-educating myself, getting into college and then uni, and working for the first time a proper job in the kitchens. I worked in the kitchens for 7 years. That was, those times were incredible. And then now, moving back to London, starting my career, meeting my wife, having my family. I mean, I look at my family today and I feel so blessed, because, years ago, two women couldn't have a family that we created, and we went through the London Women's Clinic, and I count my blessings every day, and I wouldn't change the life that I have today for anything. But it took me to do all those wild chapters to realise that actually all I need now is my family and a little house, big garden, green space for the kids to run around.
Can you explain to the listeners about Greenfry Road, the inspiration about it, but also just without any spoilers, what the show is about and how you came to write it?
Yeah, well, it is inspired by Labatt Grove, I guess. Labatt Grove runs from Notting Hill Gate all the way through up to past Harrow Road towards Brent, and it's just the different types of people that live along that road, and in these kind of areas where you can have someone that has got a lot of money and you can have someone that grows up in the state, and it's just how those characters can come to cross. I mean, one thing about growing up in Labatt Grove, which I loved, was that I went to school with kids that, because my primary school was in Notting Hill Gate. I always used to get cussed by my cousins. They used to say that I was posh. I sounded posh, but it's because I went to school with kids who had a lot of money, because my primary school was Fox Primary School. It was one of the best in London, And I mean, now I would never got in. I was too far out, but my mum pushed to get me in that primary school. And I was with kids that I went to birthday parties, no word of a lie. They had, like, they owned the whole townhouse, they had maids, they had nannies, they, you know, holidayed in the south of France. Crazy to me. But, you know, as kids, we didn't care. And that's what is nice about Ladbroke Grove, because especially around carnival time, there are some people that have a lot of wealth, and there are people that are just working class people, but you actually get to know each other in the manner, and you just become friends, or your paths cross. And I guess Greenfriar Road was kind of like, you know, one of the guys in it, he's lived there, he's never met anyone from the area, and then he, you know, meets this old school sort of London Cockney gangster character, and it's where that relationship takes him. And it's just how you can live so close to people and don't really know who they are and what's going on in their worlds. And it's another thriller. I just like writing real characters, and I think it's how, like with the opening to it, you go along the street and then you see this one from that window, you see that one from that window, you follow a cab. So I kind of wanted, the Greenfriar Road is another character, and it's like these people would have never, their past would have never crossed. All that happens, you know, there's some murder, there's some dodgy dealings that go on, but they never would have crossed if they hadn't lived on this road and been at this place at this time. Sometimes I'm writing it and I'll shock, like, surprise myself by thinking, oh, I could add that, and then I'm like, oh my god, yeah, and I read it back and I think, yeah, that's so good, I wouldn't have seen that coming. And then sometimes I'll pre-plan and think, well, that's where I want to get to. But the best shockers come from when I'm literally just writing and it just comes naturally.
Something I am confident you're a fan of is music. You're very specific with, like, you mentioned one of my favourite songs in Rose, which is Ghetto Boys' Mind Playing Tricks on Me. I love Scarface. You got UB40, Red Red Wine in Greenfriar Road. You have Return of the Mac, the album, Mark Morrison in Rose. Obviously, there's a music in Champion as well. So how important is music in your life and in your writing?
So when I write, I see the scenes. Obviously now I'll do, you know, structure my episodes or whatever and do beats and all of that, but when I see scenes, I see everything about the scene. So the music that's playing, and sometimes I'll link it to something deeper that's going on, and like, that is a tune, My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me, but also within relation to our character Carl, his mind is playing tricks on him when all that's going on, and it kind of related, and also it was around the time that incident happened, so that I kind of relate it to that. And I've got, like, in this other script that I'm talking about tomorrow, is it Shabo, when she's saying I'm Miss Naive in one of the songs with, I think it's with Georgia Smith, I don't know, and it relates to the character who's singing it. I don't know, I see scenes, and I'm a big fan of music. I listen to, like, most of the time in the car, I listen to Disney Descendants crap from my kids, right? Honestly, I know every word to the Descendants 1, 2, 3, and the new one, Rise of Red. It's like all that gets played in my car, or like Kids Bop. But when I'm on my own, oh my god, my playlist, I just bang tunes all day long. Although I don't listen to music when I write, I have to have silence to write.
How does the music work when you're writing on this show particularly?
I'd write the script normally. For instance, Vita sits at the piano and sings a song about how she's all alone and no one can, like, just sum up what she's singing about. But the, you know, composing the music and all of that, I had nothing to do with, and that wasn't my say. As an episodic writer on the show, I had nothing to do with where the music was placed. It's just, if I felt like a song would come at that point, then I would write what that song was about, then cut to this where she sings about this. So we would just, because at one point they were in the studio in one of my earlier drafts, and I was like writing the raps, and I was like, nah, I can't rap. I can't. I may be a lot of things, that I'm not a rapper. And then when I sent one of my drafts, I was like, look, you don't have to keep you don't have to keep the rap. I was just trying to freestyle it. Like, Isis, don't worry, someone probably will be writing the raps. And then it was Gets, obviously. But yeah, I did try, but no, it's not my bag.
So I want to take Isis Davis back to the beginning, because you've touched on things about your upbringing and stuff, and where you grew up. But how did you become a writer?
I was going through a lot as I was preteen, I guess. And I used to self-harm, I used to take drugs, I was just not good. And I had a lot of demons, and at one point, one day, I just literally picked up a pen and started scribbling down words, angry words, like swear words, fuck this, I hate life. Like, I would literally just write that. And it just felt like I was just getting something out. I don't know, I couldn't really talk. I didn't talk to anyone about how I really felt and what was going on for me. And I just was angry, and just finding a pen and writing swear words and like fucking horrible poems just sort of made me feel, it was a release. And soon those angry words became angry poems, and I look forward to writing them. And it all sort of started from there, really. Over the years that changed, and I started writing mini stories and introducing character and plot, just for myself though, no one else. Whenever I was doing shit and getting into trouble, or there were times when I was like remanded into children's homes and just not happy, and here, there and everywhere. And when I went into rehab, I was always still, the one thing I would do was write. And it just gave me peace of mind. And eventually my writing wasn't just angry, and it became hopeful. It became quite hopeful, and it became something that I like to read back and create all these stories and like wishes for myself. And I think a lot of what I have now in my life, at one point I wrote that I would really want this, or I wrote about characters that would have a family, be married to a woman, be allowed to be openly gay, have kids, like all of that sort of stuff. It just gave me comfort. And as I got older, I never thought I never thought this would be my actual job. But when I went to uni and did performing arts, I started writing monologues and stuff like that. And when I was leaving uni with a first-class degree, however, I wanted to be a professional actor. And in the acting world, acting agents don't take university performing arts degrees seriously, because they see it as more academic than as proper training, like from a drama school. So a lot of my peers were finishing uni and then enrolling in another 3-year course in London to do for a drama school. And I was like, oh hell no, I've already wasted so many years of my life. I'm nearly 30. I am not going to another 3 years and broke myself. I'm still paying my university loans back, mate. I'm still paying it to this day. I was like, I am not gonna get more money and do all that. So I was like, what can I do? I'm gonna write a play. I'm just gonna write a play. It'll be a one-woman show. It'll be just me, and I'll get an agent off the back of it. And obviously being really naive and hopeful and just like ready to just finally found myself, this is what I want to do. There was no doubt in my mind.
You performed this play at the Edinburgh Fringe, right?
Yeah, I performed This Is Who I Am at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. The next year I brought it to London and performed at the Camden Fringe Festival, and then I performed it at Soho Theatre Studio. Early
doors, it's hard to make money from writing. So how did you kind kind of sustain that early part of a career where perhaps you weren't being paid to do many of the things you were writing? How did you financially support yourself?
I used to work in the kitchens when I was in Gloucestershire in uni. For 7 years I worked in the kitchens. I literally had a mate who was like, this is when I just first started doing things properly, and he was like, do you want to be a pot wash, cash in hand? I was like, absolutely. This is the first time I had a proper job, and it just went from cash in hand pot wash to not cash in hand, helping around the kitchen. Over years he was like teaching me the dishes. I could cook anyway, like my kind of food, but yeah, I was just learning different dishes, and then I'd do like the light bites menu. Then he left, then I moved to a different pub where I knew someone else who I knew the chef there. Then they'd be like, oh, there's a spot here, do you want to come here? And I just sort of worked my way up where I was like running some of the nights, like the steak nights, or different like gastro pubs around Gloucestershire. And yeah, so I was doing that for a long time. When I left uni, I was still chefing. I was coming back to do auditions, acting auditions, and then it got a lot because it was just, my boss and friend was really lovely, but you know, with auditions it could be like, you've got to be in London tomorrow, and it just, after a while I just had to leave. Well, I moved back to London in the end. When I moved back to London for about 6 months, I worked in a Wetherspoons, and it was the most dire time. By the way, I don't eat from Wetherspoons, just saying.
When you started writing scripts, did you have any frames of reference? Were there like poems you liked from school or whatever? Were there shows you liked watching? Like, as a less experienced writer, were you trying to like mimic, or were you being heavily inspired by anyone, or were you just completely winging it?
Completely winging it, because a lot of my poems were rhyming poems, so it was more about the rhyming than what led up to the rhyming when I first started. And then my poems became stories, so like I could recite them, but I won't do that. But yeah, I was totally winging it. I didn't read much. I read Society Within when I was younger, and I was like, yes, this is a road book, I can relate to this. Why are all books not like this? And I actually read The Secret Garden as a kid, or had it read to me. But I didn't read much. I was a crazy Eminem fan as a kid, and I actually feel embarrassed saying it now, and I can't listen to him at all now. His old stuff, I could probably recite word for word most of his albums, but it just brings me back to a place where I'm like, I was really messed up as a kid, and I think someone like that, I just really latched on to his sick rhyming and all the, you know, he's quite sick back in the day, and it just brings me back to that time, so I can't listen to him.
You are so unique as a writer, which is why I've loved interviewing you. And I just want to close with, we've touched on music, shows a little bit, and your writing. And I want to know, if you're on a desert island and you've got to pick 5 pieces of art, it can be music, TV shows, books, poems, whatever, like what would you take?
5? That's a lot.
All right, 3. We'll go 3. And they can all be the same genre, they can be different genres. 3 pieces. I
think I would take The Wire, all the seasons. I would take Lauryn Hill, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the album, and The Sopranos.
Yeah, The Wire, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and The Sopranos. I think you're going to have a good time on this desert island. Thank you for giving your time for this interview. It's fantastic. I can't wait to see more of your work on the telly, on shows you've been writing on, but also I can't wait till you get your own green light so I can see Isis Davis show. I think you're like a super unique voice, super talented, and it's been super fun to interview you, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Jonny. It's been a pleasure.
Jonny Wright was talking to Isis Davis. To hear more writers, go to writersmosaic.org.uk.